He kissed the inside of my wrist, then looked at her. Not me. Her. And in that stillness, in that tiny moment where no one said a word, something shifted. It was so subtle, you'd miss it if you weren't paying attention. But I felt it. Something ancient. Something forbidden. Something that didn't belong in this world. Rising up between the three of us like smoke curling off a secret fire. I looked at my husband. The man I've shared 10 winters with. And then I looked at the woman sitting across the room. His mother, calm, still, her eyes locked on mine like she already knew where this night was going. And I felt it. Not fear. Not even guilt. Just gravity. Like I was being pulled into something I couldn't stop. And maybe didn't want to. You've never played truth or dare like this before. Before I tell you what happened next, take a breath with me. Soft inhale, soft exhale. And if you're ready to hear the kind of story that you'll never forget, the kind that'll make you question what love really is, what family really means, then make this our secret. Subscribe to Olivia Touching Tales. And hold my hand while I tell you the truth. It started as a game. Just a silly little game we played by the fire. One of those cold holiday nights where the wind shakes the windows, and the wine has just enough time to settle into your bones. We were staying at the family cabin. Snow everywhere, thick and quiet. The kind of silence that makes your thoughts louder. There were only 3 of us there that night. Me, my husband, and her, his mother. We'd had dinner, laughed, caught up, shared memories. And somewhere between dessert and the second bottle of wine, someone said it. 2 words. Truth or dare. I remember thinking it would be harmless. Fun. A way to pass time. I didn't know then that it would unravel everything I thought I understood about us. About him. About me. Because sometimes the dares aren't about taking your clothes off. They're about taking your mask off. And the truths? They're the ones we've been too scared to say out loud for years. And that night, someone said theirs, without speaking a single word. And it changed everything. There's something haunting about the way a room can change. 1 second, it's a cozy little cabin. And the next, it's a stage. And all of a sudden, you're not playing the game. The game is playing you. And when he reached across the floor, touched my hand, and then let his fingers fall away from mine so he could hand her the bottle, I swear, my whole body knew. Something was coming. And I wasn't ready. But I wasn't running either. It was the kind of cold that made you crave skin. The kind that seeps into your bones and makes you remember what it feels like to be held. Outside, the snow was whispering against the glass. Inside, everything felt wrapped in velvet. The fire cracked softly. Its glow bathed the room in amber. Shadows moved slow across the floor. There were wool blankets draped over the back of the couch, half-finished mugs of cinnamon-spiced cocoa resting on the coffee table, and that sweet, warm scent of pine lingering like a memory that didn't quite belong to any of us. We'd been laughing. Loose, tipsy kind of laughter, the kind that belongs to holiday nights and red wine and just enough nostalgia. One of those evenings where time doesn't tick. It breathes. The game had started simple. Truth or dare. We were curled up on the living room rug like teenagers at a sleepover. Except we were grown. Married. Complicated. And she was there, watching from the armchair, legs crossed, a glass of Cabernet in her hand. His mother. She wasn't playing. Not officially. She just sat there, regal, silent, amused. Her beauty had only deepened with age, like someone who'd mastered the art of presence, of restraint. And that restraint, it filled the room more than the fire did. We were pretending it was still just a game, but it had started to change. I felt it when he placed his hand on my thigh under the table. His touch always steadied me. Even after all these years, it still did. But that night, it felt different. It didn't ground me. It guided me. Like he was slowly, wordlessly, leading me somewhere I hadn't agreed to go, yet wasn't saying no to. His fingers were slow, curious. He didn't look at me when he did it. He just leaned back, smiling at something I'd said, then let his thumb draw lazy circles over the curve of my leg beneath the blanket. And she saw it. I know she saw it, because when I glanced up, just for a second, her eyes were on mine. Not judging, not surprised, just open, and maybe curious. That look she gave me, it wasn't cold, it wasn't distant, it was knowing, like she'd been here before, like she understood something I hadn't even dared to ask yet. The wine made everything softer. My lips were warm, my body heavy, my heart beating just a little too loud. I remember leaning into him, just slightly. His mouth brushed my temple, just a graze, and then he dared me to take a sip of her wine. That was the dare. Simple, innocent, but the way he said it? It wasn't about the drink. It was about her. So I reached for her glass, her lipstick still fresh on the rim, and without breaking her gaze, I brought it to my lips. Her eyes stayed on me, every second of the sip, every movement of my throat as I swallowed. And something inside me cracked open. It wasn't attraction. It wasn't lust. It was deeper, older, like I'd stepped into a river that had been waiting for me forever. And I think she felt it, too. He dared her next, to tell the most intimate secret she'd never shared. She smiled, slow, deliberate, and said she'd rather show than tell. And then silence. Just the fire, and our breath. I didn't ask what she meant, because I was afraid of the answer. And I wanted it. His hand slid higher on my thigh. I leaned back into him, and for a few moments, we just sat there, in that heavy, velvet air. No words, just a question, unspoken, growing between the three of us. I could feel the pulse of it, like heat between my ribs. And I knew we weren't in a cabin anymore. We were in a moment, suspended, crackling, ready for something we hadn't named, but could feel. We laughed like a real family that night, like we hadn't buried decades of silence between us, like the space between her and me had always been soft, like I wasn't still wondering if she liked me, if she ever had. But beneath that warm room, that firelight, that soft blanket draped across my legs, I was starving. It wasn't for food. And it wasn't just for touch. It was for something deeper. Something harder to name. And it wasn't him. He tried. He always tried. Soft candles. Long baths. Hands that moved slow and sweet, like he thought I might break. He whispered praise into my ear at night. Told me how lucky he was. Told me I was beautiful even when I didn't believe it. But his love was always gentle. So gentle. And there was a part of me, a part one never said out loud, that didn't want to be adored. It wanted to be shattered. Not out of pain, but out of hunger. Out of the need to be fully seen. Unhidden. Undone. I never told him that. Because how do you explain a hunger like that? To someone who's only ever known how to soothe? I didn't want softer pillows. I wanted to be known in the places I kept secret, the ones even I didn't look at in the mirror. And the strange thing was, she saw it. His mother. The woman I'd tiptoed around for years. The one who always smelled like cedar and cold perfume. Who never raised her voice, but could silence a room with a look. That night, she didn't look at me like I was her son's wife. She looked at me like she knew. Not just what I wanted, but what I lacked. There was no judgment in her eyes. No smugness. Just knowing. Like she could see the cracks I tried so hard to cover. The ones he never touched. I thought I was hiding it well. I smiled when I was supposed to. I giggled when the dares got silly. I leaned into my husband, played the part, let his hand rest high on my thigh, and pretended it was enough. But it wasn't. It hadn't been for a long time. And she knew. God help me, she knew. It was quiet for a while. Just the sound of the fire, the rustle of the trees outside, the three of us sitting there, pretending nothing was happening under the surface. And then she spoke. Her voice soft, like she was sliding a knife across velvet. Truth or dare, sweetheart? Sweetheart. She'd never called me that before. I looked at my husband. He gave me a little grin. Didn't sense the tension. Didn't feel the tremor that had gone through my legs. Because for him, it was still a game. But for me, everything in my body had gone still. Truth or dare? From her. I swallowed. And I realized then, I wasn't scared of her question. I was scared of what I might answer. Because the truth, the real truth, was that I was aching. Not for something more, but for something else. He was sweet, steady, safe, but I hadn't felt undone in years. Not pulled apart. Not gripped and claimed and wrecked in the way a woman sometimes wants to be. Not because she's unloved, but because she wants to be loved in ways she can't explain. He kissed my shoulders. He ran my baths. He asked me how my day was. But he never asked me who I really was. Under all the ways I was trying to be enough. And in her eyes, in his mother's calm, unreadable eyes, I saw something I didn't expect. Permission. Not lust. Not seduction. Just the permission to stop pretending I was satisfied. Truth or dare, sweetheart? I opened my mouth, and for the first time that night, maybe the first time in years, I didn't know who I was trying to protect. Myself? My marriage? Or the lie I'd been living so well? I closed my eyes and said, truth. That night, after the game ended, after the candles had burned low and the laughter had faded into the bones of the cabin, he reached for me in bed. His fingers brushed my hip under the blanket. Gentle, familiar, like they always had. And I let him. Because I loved him. Because I do love him. But that night, his hands felt like they belonged to someone trying to touch a memory, not a woman. I turned toward him slowly, his face half-lit by the fire still burning across the room. And I saw it before he even spoke. The question forming on his lips. He'd felt it too. The shift. The tension. The silence I couldn't swallow. His brows softened. His voice barely a whisper. Am I not enough? And I didn't answer right away. Because there was no easy answer. No pretty bow I could tie around a truth I hadn't even fully named. I just breathed. Stared at him. Saw the ache behind his eyes, not anger. Not blame. Just fear. Of not being enough. Of losing me. Of loving someone he couldn't fully satisfy, no matter how hard he tried. My throat tightened. I slid my fingers along his chest, slow, just to feel the rhythm of his heart underneath my palm. And then I said the only thing I could say without lying. You are. But I think I need something different sometimes. Something neither of us understands yet. He didn't flinch. Didn't pull away. He just stared at the ceiling. Like the wood grain might hold answers I couldn't give him. I don't want to lose you, I said quietly. I don't want to break this. He nodded once, still staring upward. I know. I touched his cheek then. Gently turned his face toward mine. What if it wasn't about replacing anything? I whispered. What if it was about expanding? Letting ourselves feel more. Safely. Together. He studied me then. Like I was a woman he hadn't fully met yet. And maybe I was. Maybe this part of me had always been waiting. In the corner. In the dark. Patient. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. If I could give you more. Without losing us. Would you want it? And that moment. That quiet, breathless moment. Hung in the air like glass. I didn't move. Didn't answer. Because the truth was already humming between us. He rolled onto his side. His thumb brushed the corner of my mouth. And he said, what if she could? He didn't say her name. Didn't have to. The silence between us twisted. Thickened. I blinked. Once. He didn't explain what he meant. Didn't elaborate. Just let the words sit there. Like an open door we could both pretend wasn't real. My pulse ticked under my skin like a clock wound too tight. And for the first time in my marriage, I was scared of what I might say next, because maybe he wasn't just offering me permission. Maybe he was offering me something else. Something dangerous. Something sacred. Something that would change everything. The next night, the game returned. But not like before. There was no giddy laughter. No clinking glasses or fake dares made just to be silly. Everything was slower. Heavier. We sat in the same room. The fire burning low. But the air around us felt charged. Like something ancient had been stirred. And now it wouldn't settle. He brought out the cards this time. A bottle of wine, opened already. No pretense. Just the three of us. Her in the same armchair. Her legs folded beneath her. Barefoot and impossibly calm. Me, curled against the couch cushion. Heart pounding like I was 17 again. Like I didn't know how this would end. But every nerve in me was begging to find out. And him. He sat between us. Like a bridge. Or a spark. His hand reached for mine first. Warm, firm. But not possessive. Then he looked at her. Truth or dare? She smiled. The kind of smile that knows more than it says. Dare. He didn't flinch. Didn't glance at me for permission. He just said it, clear as air. Touch her hair. She stood slowly. Moved behind me. And I swear, I felt her before she even made contact. Her fingers slid through my hair like water. Soft. Intentional. She gathered it in her hands, twisted it once, let it fall. It wasn't sexual. Not at first. But it was intimate. More intimate than anything I'd felt in months. She sat back down. Silence. Then me. Looking at him. Truth or dare? I asked, barely above a whisper. Dare. I swallowed. Then said it. Kissed the back of my neck. He leaned in. Slow, reverent. His lips grazed the softest part of me. Just once. And when I exhaled, I swear it came from a place deeper than my lungs. Her eyes didn't leave me. Not once. The game continued. But it didn't feel like a game anymore. It felt like a ceremony. A crossing over. She dared him to describe my body in detail. He did. I dared her to tell me a secret she's never told her son. She did. He dared me to sit on the floor between them. I did. And the dares began to shift. From playful to personal. From surface to skin. From suggestion to surrender. We were being peeled open. Layer by layer. And somewhere between the 5th and 6th round, my whole world narrowed to this firelit room. And the strange, delicate rhythm we'd found. By the time she turned to me again and whispered, Truth or dare? My voice shook. I couldn't answer right away, because I didn't know who I belonged to anymore. She tilted her head. Waited. Dare, I finally said. And she didn't smile this time. She just leaned forward. Her voice soft, precise. Like something rehearsed in the back of her mind for years. Let me show you, she said. How a woman teaches her son. The room stopped breathing. Even the fire quieted. And I felt something loosen inside me. Something primal. Something terrified. But also, something ready. She stood again. Held out her hand. And the dare wasn't a question anymore. It was a door. And I stepped through it. She touched me like I was sacred. Like I was something she'd once lost, and had finally found again. Her fingers weren't rushed. They moved like memory. Like they knew what they were reaching for, and wanted to savor the rediscovery. The pads of her thumbs brushed over my collarbones. The delicate slope where warmth meets breath. She didn't ask permission, she offered presence. And somehow that meant more. I sat still, barely breathing, because the way she touched me, it made silence feel holy. She didn't need to speak. Her hands said everything. You are not invisible. You are not too much. You are not alone in your longing. Behind us, he didn't move. Just watched. Rooted. Not in jealousy, but reverence. He was the stillness between our breaths. The anchor while we swayed. And in that moment, just that, I felt myself soften. Drop down. Out of my head. Into something warm. Something real. Then, he came closer. Not with urgency, but with intention. He knelt in front of me, placed his hands on my thighs, light, steady, and kissed the skin just above my knee. Not once, twice, 3 times. Higher each time, slower, and then, my stomach. A single kiss, just below my ribs. Lingering. Still. But what shook me, what sent heat spiraling up my spine, wasn't the kiss. It was his eyes. They weren't on me. They were on her. As though he was waiting, learning, letting her guide him. And she did. Without words. She showed him. Through her breath. Through the curve of her shoulders. Through the gentle placement of her palm against the back of his neck. How to hold a woman. How to listen with his hands. I watched them both. Felt them both. And something in me cracked open. She shifted. Took my hands in hers. Placed them above my head. Laid me back slowly onto the thick fur rug near the fire. She didn't hesitate. Not once. Her body hovered over mine like a question I had already answered. Like she had waited years to love someone this way. Not with demand, but with direction. She knew. She moved with grace. But her grip was certain. Every place she touched, every place she kissed, was claimed. My jaw, my ribs, the inside of my arm. And then, she took his hand, placed it beside hers, and they began to teach me. Together. One breath at a time. I was held. By him. By her. 2 tides rising over me. Pulling in opposite directions. But somehow still carrying me the same way. She pressed her lips to my shoulder. As his fingers found the small of my back. He whispered into my neck. As her hand covered my chest. Firm. Grounding. Their rhythms were different. But in sync. Like a call and response. One giving. One receiving. Then switching without ever breaking the thread. I didn't know which way to lean. So I let go. Completely. And let them take me. Not in pieces, but in layers. Not for pleasure, but for truth. They saw everything, and still stayed. By the end. I didn't know whose hands were where anymore. I only knew I was no longer searching. I was inside something sacred. Something holy and human all at once. I could feel their breath on every side of me. Warm, grounding, real. I was held, seen, worshipped, and not for what I gave, but for what I was. What I had always been, beneath the quiet ache. Beneath the years of waiting, pleasing, wondering. Their touch didn't just arouse me. It released me. I sobbed once, quiet, involuntary. And neither of them pulled away. Instead, they stayed. She wrapped her arms around me from behind, her chin resting between my shoulder blades, and he pressed his forehead to my belly. Just holding, I felt their hearts. 2 different drums. One rhythm. My skin tingled, not from touch, but from truth. I had never felt so chosen. Not for being perfect. Not for being his. Not for being hers. But for being willing. For opening. For letting go. I wasn't ashamed. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't reaching anymore. I was home. There was a moment. I wasn't in my body anymore. Not really. I was light. Thunder. Water rushing through cracks that had waited too long. All the holding back. The swallowing of words. The tight smiles. The polite moans. The years of pleasing without asking. They shattered. Not loud. Not violent. Like snow melting too fast to stop. Like rain that had been hovering in the clouds for a decade. Suddenly falling all at once. I gasped. But it wasn't for air. It was for permission. And, for the first time, it was given. It wasn't about sex. God, it never was. It was about all the ways we ache to be touched and never are. The skin beneath the skin. The quiet between the words. The parts of us that don't have names, because no one's ever looked at them long enough to name them. She saw them. He held them. And I stopped apologizing for needing them. My body pulsed with something older than desire. Something truer. Like I was being rewritten. Not into someone new, but into who I was before I learned to hide. I cried. Softly at first. Then deeper. The kind of crying that doesn't sound like pain, but relief. The kind of sobbing that feels like exhaling for the first time in years. She didn't hush me. She just rocked me. Her chin tucked near my ear. Her hands gentle in my hair. And he stayed right there, kissing the back of my hand. Like it was a vow. A promise that none of this would vanish when the fire burned low. And then, stillness. Not empty. Just full in a way that didn't need more. No reaching. No proving. Just being. She kissed my forehead. Not like a mother. Not like a lover. Like a woman who had seen me. And recognized something in me she'd been missing too. And he kissed my fingers. One by one. As if remembering who I'd always been. Before I became just his wife. I floated there. Full. And emptied. At once. The flames beside us cracked low and golden. Outside, the snow pressed against the windows in thick silence. Inside, I was not broken anymore. Just opened. Finally opened. And no one turned away. He had watched the whole time. And not once did he look away. Not in shame. Not in jealousy. Not even confusion. Just awe. Like watching something wholly unfold. Like he'd cracked open a door to something too big for language, and chose not to shut it again. The fire had burned low by then. Just glowing embers, soft and pulsing like the heartbeat of the room. The three of us were wrapped in one thick wool blanket. Knees touching. Arms tangled. Cheeks pressed to warm skin. It didn't feel wrong. It didn't even feel bold. It just was. Like gravity. Like breath. She lay on one side of me. A hand resting gently on my hip. Not possessive, not asking. Just there. Steady. And he was on the other side. His fingers combing through the back of my hair. Like he'd done 1,000 times before. But this time felt different. This time, it was after. I looked at him. And I whispered, "Thank you." He didn't speak. He just brushed a strand of hair from my cheek. And smiled. Not a grin. Not pride. Just a quiet, aching kind of love. The kind that lets go of what it thought love had to look like. And chooses truth instead. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reaching. Not straining for approval. Not yearning to be seen. Not folding myself into shapes just to feel wanted. I was still. I was held. I was complete. I didn't know what would come after this. I didn't care. All I knew, in that silent, glowing space between our bodies, was that something old had ended, and something raw, beautiful, terrifyingly real, had just begun. Would you ever let someone else give your partner what you couldn't? I know. That question alone feels like a betrayal. Like even asking it out loud. Somehow cracks the promise wide open. But I wonder, what if love isn't about being enough all the time? What if it's about being brave enough to share? When sharing is the only thing that keeps someone from breaking, what if the thing they need isn't something you failed to give, but something you were never meant to? Could you open that door? Not out of weakness, but out of devotion? If the only way to heal her was through you, but not only you, would you still say no? I didn't know what I was saying yes to that night. Not fully, not logically, but some part of me, some wild, quiet truth inside my chest, did. And maybe that's what love really is. Not certainty, not rules, not even boundaries. Maybe it's just this. Letting someone be whole, even if it means they aren't just yours anymore. So tell me, would you do it? Would you watch the person you love come alive in someone else's hands? If it meant you'd finally see them whole? Would you? Tell me what you'd do. I'm genuinely curious. If this story moved something inside you, if it touched a place you didn't know was still aching, subscribe to Olivia Touching Tales. Because some truths are too tender to tell out loud. But here, you're safe to feel them. With me. Always.